So, microdosing changed my life. Welcome back to the Happiest Sad Person podcast. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little more specific on kind of one particular topic. As the intro hinted, I started microdosing, and it did, in fact, change my life for the better, obviously. So I'm going to open up with why I decided to try this, to start to imbibe, if you will, and kind of how I had my back against the wall when it came to trying this, because this wasn't my first choice. It's a very salutary thing to realize that the rather dull universe in which most of us spend most of our time is not the only universe there is. I think it's healthy that people should have this experience. Aldous Huxley, Moshka, Writings on Psychedelics and the Visionary Experience. So I've always wanted to try psychedelics. I've always been intrigued. I've always felt drawn to them. I had heard things on the periphery about them, but I wasn't well versed in them at all. I really only knew about them when it comes to like hearing about it through like the 1960s Woodstock, the Laurel Canyon music era, which is something I'm interested and passionate about. And so I'd only heard it through books, movies, TV, just sort of ancillary ways of getting information. And I have some notes here. I'd also felt like there was so many parts of my brain that I couldn't access. Like there were doors that were just shut, or doors that you'd open them and there'd be nothing there. And you'd think, it feels like there should be something there. And so I just feel like I wasn't getting the full gamut of my own brain. And I had been ready to try something for a while now. I just was a little too afraid, and still illegal, people don't quite accept psychedelics in the way that they should as in a therapeutic sense, and there's still very much a stigma attached. Now let me put in a caveat here. I am not a medical doctor. I am not a doctor of literature. I am not a healthcare worker. I am not in any way certified to talk about this. This is just my opinion and experience doing this. So back to kind of why I wanted to try this. I also feel like Earth is just one plane, one dimension that we have access to. I also think consciousness is such a curious thing, and psychedelics play with that in both a good way and potentially a bad way, a dangerous way. So I was at the point where I was willing to take a risk. And for me, luckily it paid off, but I know a lot of people it doesn't work out in their favor. So I really wanted to try this because I've had treatment resistant depression my entire life. I don't remember a time in my life where I wasn't depressed. And I had really just hit a wall with being so angry with myself, with dealing with this and feeling like I'd lost so much time, and I just couldn't get out of my own brain. And no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I wanted to change, I couldn't change. And it was really devastating to me. I have bipolar too. That's kind of the overarching diagnosis in my life. And I was also, the full gamut of my history is that I was diagnosed with severe OCD at the age of 8. So clearly everything wasn't, going wonderfully. Um, a hybrid, it was mostly anxiety, but it was also a hybrid of depression. I remember being depressed at like 8. I was writing weird, dark Edgar Allan Poe sort of poetry as a child, like way too young to be writing about death and sadness and existential dread and panic. Like I've been a hybrid of anxious and depressed my whole life. I don't know anything else. And that kind of ties into, we'll tie into things later. But as for bipolar 2, I am mostly depressive, but I do have manic episodes. And most of my life, post graduating college, after I had a series of what I now realize were kind of nervous breakdowns, it was a cycle of doing damage, and then either in a manic state or a depressive state, either me spending money frantically and destroying my life in a manic state, or being depressed and wasting time, sleeping through things, missing deadlines, undoing any decently good thing I did in a manic episode through the depressive episodes. And that was my life cycle for like 6, 7 years. And so I never really got anything done. The wheels were spinning. It's like when you're stuck in snow or mud, and the tires are moving, but you're not getting anywhere. And that was kind of my life. So I was perpetually exhausted, but I wasn't doing anything. And so it was just so frustrating. And I was so done with that experience. And so going back in time as well, I've basically been on every antidepressant you could think of over, preteen all the way up to mid-20s. I've tried them all basically, and they didn't really work. They kind of band-aided things, but they all had their different levels of fixing one thing, maybe making me feel a little better, but nothing really changed it. It's like the true example of treatment-resistant depression. And then there's also the tandem of birth control. And birth control can sometimes be in tandem or have some antidepressive effects, or it can affect hormones. And anytime I'd be on birth control, especially the last time I went on it, oral birth control, it made me crazy. So I can't really take certain kinds of birth control because that kind of triggers things for me. So I didn't realize it, but I'm hypersensitive to any medication that could be determined to be an antidepressant, because I have that sort of dual state mentality. And then my final straw, which actually got me diagnosed with bipolar 2, was I started having physical reactions to an antidepressant. My body basically was like, no more of this. We gotta shut it down. So I started having severe arm numbness, and I thought, oh, maybe I pinched a nerve. That went on for like 10 days, maybe close to 2 weeks. And then I started having depth perception issues. So I couldn't see how close the door frame was to me, or I would bump into the corner of the kitchen counter. And I never had those issues before. And then the final straw, which really scared me, was my thoughts were delayed. So my brain would have a thought, and then I would be like, okay, I have a thought. And then I couldn't verbalize it efficiently. It was like there was a block there or something. And that was terrifying. I really thought, I have Parkinson's, I have MS, I have ALS, I have something, because something is wrong. I've never had that thing where it was like a neuron there was like a neuron blockage, like a traffic jam. Something was really wrong. And that's how I ended up getting diagnosed with bipolar 2, because I shouldn't have been on antidepressants. There we go. I should have been on a mood stabilizer. And then once I went on the mood stabilizer, things got infinitely better, but still the treatment resistant depression remained. My neural pathways, because of the OCD and how it operates, were really damaged. And my behavior and pathology was really just entrenched with the depression. And that was debilitating. And naturally, kind of connected to that, my baseline in general is very, very low. So even when things are going really well for me, if someone transferred into my body, they would probably be shocked at how depressed I am. Even if I'm at a really high level for me, it still is very depressed. And I got tired of being depressed. And it was, especially after having, sort of an aha moment where I was really kind of snapped out of my disassociation. And I had to go through the experience of feeling all my feelings and kind of reliving life again. I was really just over the pain of being depressed because I was able to shut it down for so long. And kind of going into my depression in general, I had existential depression, thinking like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Obsessively, compulsively thinking about, what mark am I going to leave in the world? It's tied to anxiety, but definitely is attached to a depression for me because I get depressed about how little I've done on earth. General depression. And then I have an obsession, a weird thing where a sort of thing about death and dying. And again, that is anxiety, but it also ties into my depression. Again, kind of like feeling like I'm wasting time. And that's very frustrating. I also have seasonal depression. So I got it all, baby. It's all up here. So this gets to kind of the present-ish day where I finally decided to do something about this treatment-resistant depression. I feel really excited getting out of my disassociation that I've been in most of my life, feeling emotions again, learning about emotions again. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to try ketamine. Nasal ketamine, esketamine is an approved medication for treatment-resistant depression. In a lot of instances, it's done at a psychiatrist's office. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I called places. I had done my research. I was really well versed with it. I spent a few weeks really being like, I'm going to do this. And so I chose a clinic. And after talking to them for a while, I found out that I would need to probably get new insurance. So the treatments themselves are about $800 ish without insurance, but most insurances cover partial, so it still would have been extremely, extremely expensive because you have to do a few for a week, and then I think it's about was 6 to 8 weeks, and you do 3 the first week or two, and then you start to taper off. But by the end of the 6 weeks, you've done thousands of dollars worth of sessions, and I don't have that kind of money right now. You also can't drive yourself to those sessions, FYI. You have to have somebody drive you to and from. Luckily, I had found somebody that was willing to rearrange their schedule to help me. But I felt bad burdening them, even though the offer was there. And I just, if you're going through something emotional like that, you don't want to immediately get in the car with somebody after experiencing that and then having that discussion, the person that's driving you. And it seems like a lot, but I was willing to do it still at that point. So I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to go this route because after I talked to the person on the phone, done the initial paperwork, they had said that I would have to get approved by their psychiatrist and prove my diagnoses. And I would still most likely get rejected because of my bipolar 2 and my propensity for potential mania, which puts them at a liability, and they don't want to take that risk. So therefore I would be rejected from the program, and I would have done all of this with nothing to show for it. And the process of doing it itself was extremely challenging. So I was kind of at that point at an impasse between a rock and a hard place. And I really just wanted to catch up on my life and fix things. And I was finally at a point where I was like, I want to be me for the first time in my life. I was like, I want to experience life, and I'm excited, even though I'm terrified about the future. I have an excitement that I haven't had for a long time. And my ultimate goal is finishing my book, and this depression was getting in the way of that. And so I was like, all right, I took the plunge. I found some guidance online. Because psychedelics are technically, what is it, a Schedule 1, Schedule 2 drug, illegal drug in most states. I have to be vague here on purpose, but I found some guidance. And if you Google around, you'll probably be able to find some similar guidance that I found. So yeah, if you want to try this, Google around, hit Reddit, see what you find. You'll probably stumble into something. So I decided to do it, and I did the paperwork. I wrote down my goals. I did everything I needed to do, set up my meetings, and I met with someone that gave me some advice, and then I ordered the plant medicine, because that's kind of what they call it. So yeah, it was the beginning for me. But first, psychedelics are illegal, not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. Terence McKenna. So the general consensus is mushrooms are dangerous. The kind of roaring 60s ended with Charles Manson and his killing of Sharon Tate in the 60s, along with, what was it, J.C. Bring and the LaBianca family. And that was connected to psychedelics and LSD and drug use, and that kind of put a stain on the whole research of them, because at that point psychedelics were being researched to be really impactful treatments for mental health and just daily living struggles, and they was getting some pretty good results. But unfortunately, there's also a theory that Charles Manson was given the stuff on purpose and sort of meant to be the bringer down of the hippie movement, and the magic of the 60s, because counterculture was getting too dangerous. The Black Panthers, the free love, it was changing the puritanical American culture into something that most of the world wasn't recognizing. At least the kind of heteronormative structure of America wasn't recognizing. And that scared people. So there's that theory. Down the line, maybe talk more about that. But so the 60s culture, like I said before, is something I've always resonated with. I've loved the music. The Doors, Grateful Dead, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, all of that music is kind of what I was brought up on, and it's also what I've just gravitated toward and loved. So I've always been fascinated by the culture of psychedelics in relation to that time period. And a lot of people associate psychedelics with that time period. And there was a lot of research going on in that time as well. And now mushrooms are sort of considered dangerous, illegal, risky. The idea is that they make you see trippy colors, they make music more fun, but they're not a legit way of treatment. And they're definitely stigmatized more than alcohol. Bars are around every corner, same with liquor stores, but it's rare that we even have weed stores now or vape stores, and certainly not really psychedelics. That's still very much stigmatized in traditional culture and media. But some new research is coming out that's sort of reinventing and hopefully reinvigorating the research done with psychedelics. And there's definitely companies, I think Brian Johnson, the guy who spends $2 million a year trying not to die, don't age guy. He has a company called Kernel. I'll link some resources down below. Paul Stamets talks a lot about psychedelic research. And there's a lot of other podcasts also that people in the medical field, research field, that talk about psychedelics and their potential benefits and also risks as well. But there's a newfound respect, I think, that's developing for psychedelics. And now that I've experienced this, I definitely want to be a part of promoting that healthy level of respect for this powerful medicine, and hopefully maybe being a part of getting it out to the masses, the people that are good candidates for it, because not everybody is a good candidate for it. So yeah, the concept of microdosing and macrodoses, mini doses, different kinds of psychedelics and their treatment on PTSD, treatment with PTSD is pretty exciting. So those are kind of the general feelings about psychedelics. The only spirit that ever gave me a name was Saint Tammany, who reassured me of my future success early on and kept saying that the name Matthew Edward Hall, whom I predicted will be a prophet or future savior of some sort. I've confirmed Saint Tammany to be a Tamanind, the only Native American saint, also by Terence McKenna. So Native Americans were kind of the not the first per se, but definitely connected to the earth more so than most cultures. And so they really are treated as kind of a lot of often the keepers of psychedelics, of plant medicine. Native Americans, indigenous people all around the world had shamans who did different kinds of ways of administering psychedelics. And psychedelics had a major spiritual connection to the past, in the past. It's been around, plants have been around since the beginning of time. There's a theory that, psychedelics allow you to have that communication with God, with a higher power, seeing something beyond yourself, comprehending the universe, comprehending death. They say taking DMT is like seeing death in the universe and sort of the entirety of everything. And I think it's important to respect the spiritual significance of the medicine, of mushrooms, of psychedelics, of where they come from, of the histories behind them. I think if you're going to go into this, you have to have a level of reverence. Not like this is God that you need to bow down to or pray to or anything, but there is a level of anything that is good and helps you and gives you something, just like any person or thing, anything that helps you, you've gratitude. So I think it's the practice of being grateful for this thing that's helping you. So I was stressed when I got some guidance to thank the medicine, its origins, where it came from, and respect nature. So I'm naturally passionate about protecting flora and fauna. So I also feel like there's universal consciousness, kind of an animism way of belief where everything sort of has a soul, the plants, the rocks, the trees, animals, people. We all sort of share this, are tethered to this energy, this soul. We're all made of matter, so it kind of makes sense. My grandfather was very much a proponent of this and taught me this really important skill when I was young. And I've been reading a lot about panpsychism and sort of how there's a level of consciousness within sort of everything that's made of matter, though it's not the level of consciousness that humans have. But it's a spectrum, just like there's a spectrum of consciousness in people. So I think that's very interesting. And I think that when you look at life like that, it makes sense. Granted, panpsychism isn't entirely validated by the scientific community. It's very interesting. It's something I want to learn more about. There's also a concept that the Bible is an allegory for taking psychedelics, of kind of the burning bush, the water running down, and then basically, the great floods, and then the plants rise up, and they're the psychedelics that the people take, and it gives them salvation. I'm not doing it justice, but there's a man named John M. Allegro, and he has a novel that he wrote that discusses this theory, and he studied the Bible for a very long period of time. And here's a quote from him. Thousands of years before Christianity, secret cults arose which worshipped the sacred mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, which, for various reasons, including its shape and power as a drug, came to be regarded as a symbol of God on earth. When the secrets of the cult had to be written down, it was done in the form of codes hidden in folk tales. This is the basic origin of the stories in the New Testament. They are a literary device to spread the rites and rituals of the mushroom worship to the faithful. So, very interesting. And it's a book I want to read. So I want to be talking about that in more future episodes. In my carpet bag are the mushrooms that I gathered in the woods. With 2 fingers, I pick up a piece and look at it. Then I take a bite and wait for my body to react. Now I'm in a better mood. In a short time, I'll be dead or alive. I'm not always sure that there's any difference. Peter H. Fogtall, SARS dwarf. So I get my advice. I decide to do psychedelics, microdosing. I order the plant medicine. I get it in the mail. I choose a blend that's part nootropic, part heart opener, empathy builder, kind of a getting a focus and flow state and sort of becoming more emotionally aware. And so that was the blend I chose. And one day, I think it was a day or 2 after it arrived, I bit the bullet and I decided to take it. And I was initially wary because the first day I felt very slowed down. And I sort of was wary about what I had done. I regretted my choice. I'm like, oh no, is this like gonna, because it kind of felt like a THC high, like a like your body's a surround sound speaker. Everything's hyper intense and kind of bassy and boomy and kind of, you're a little far removed. It's like when you're next to the speaker at a concert. It's just sometimes too much and too buzzy. But I still liked the way that I felt. And that kind of intensity wore off after a bit. And then I could kind of see what was going on. My mind felt like a sieve, however you pronounce it. Sieve, I guess is the more appropriate way of pronouncing it. And only the negative thoughts could escape through. I couldn't, even if I wanted to have compulsive thoughts, OCD thoughts, negative thoughts, my mind would just, they'd fall right through like sand. And it was a little creepy because I was like, oh no, if you can do this with bad things, what can I do with good things? But it felt good. And I was like, this is what it feels like to not be a hybrid of depressed and anxious simultaneously. It removed a lot of that repetitive thinking. And it was so overt to me the first day because that's my natural kind of inner monologue. So it was so bizarre to not have that in the back of my mind. And the first day I just felt relief that I did it. I felt relief that the day was over, that I survived, that the thing I wanted to do for so long was accomplished, that it worked, that it wasn't going to be like a scam that, kind of like when people told me to just listen for God to talk to you. And I never got the beam down from God, that he never called. He never left a voicemail. I never got that feeling. but I did get that experience with psychedelics. And I was just proud that I did something that scared me. Even though it was for me exclusively and to help me, it was still very scary to give up control of your own mind, especially when you're a very controlling person. And then day two, I felt that buzzy feeling again, but it dissipated quicker. And I just was in an overall better mood. May I say that microdosing is perceptible, it's below your perception. So you really shouldn't feel it working. But I think I'm more sensitive to medication than most people when it comes to playing with sort of like, my history with antidepressants, how quickly mood stabilizers worked for me. I can't really take birth control orally. So for me, I just think I'm more sensitive to medication, even though being on a mood stabilizer dulls the effects of the psilocybin, which is interesting. So day two, I was getting ready one day and it was enjoyable. And I was having fun listening to music, putting on makeup. Normally I have this feeling when I'm getting ready of like dread and anxiety. I'm also frantic, but I just was present in what I was doing and was looking at myself in the mirror, and I liked what I saw and I just felt happy. And I realized I don't feel that very much. Just content, happy, not euphoric happy, but just happy doing something bland every day. And I went out that night and I was really present and had a lot of fun. And it wasn't that fun of an evening. It didn't actually even work out the way that I thought, but it was just a good time. I was like, this is what being a person is all about. It's like, this is what this has given me. It's made me a human being, which is so cool, but then also sad because you're grieving the time that you lost. So day three is when that sort of off feeling went away. I felt the effects subtly, but usually now when I take it, I just feel a little happier, a little more giggly, a little smiley, present, and focused rather than feeling high. Granted, if you do mix it with alcohol, you'll have a double experience because you're taking two things at once. I also realized I needed less alcohol because taking this, if I'm going out at night, I don't need like that boost from alcohol, which is pretty cool. You also take it the way I'm taking it. There's different ways to take it. You can look up different ways of taking psychedelics, microdosing. But I do 3 days on, 2 days off. And you can take off as many days in between as you'd like. But that seems to be working for me so far. Granted, it's only been, I started late November. It's now mid-January. So December, so it's only been about 2-ish months. Shrooms are full of shit. That's the whole story. Grown in shit, it's their essence. They try to humble you in these ways that bring you down to their level. A.D. Alawat in limbo. So some of the realizations that I had, I kind of wanted just to, everyone's different. Basically, the medicine kind of gives you what you need. It can kind of give you what you want. You should go in with goals in mind, tangible goals. But these are some of the realizations I had and continue to have. I'm more afraid of being well than unwell, as I've spent my whole life with depression. Leaving it behind is terrifying, even though it has damaged my life and robbed so much from me. Doing psychedelics is sort of a self-experimentation, figuring out what your own mind is translating for you. My anger in my daily life subsided, but it didn't disappear. I was able to see why I was so angry and be able to analyze it without it being abjectly painful. I have more patience for myself. I stopped looking at myself with disdain. I'm beginning to actually love myself. I was on this process before, but I started to really like the person in the mirror, recognize myself, especially because I've dealt with depersonalization and derealization a lot in my life. So that has really helped that. Kind of tough thing that not a lot of people talk about, looking at yourself in the mirror and not feeling any connection to the way that you look. And for me, the idea of mastering my extremes. So my natural pathology is to be extreme. So I need to make it work for me for changing the core of who I am. I started to reevaluate my relationships, my friendships, and understand what I was missing and what I have done wrong. It wasn't in a judgmental or cruel way to myself, and not in a compulsive way. And I didn't have anger for myself in the past. I just sort of had more empathy for me. And I remember one day editing a podcast video and watching the clips back. And normally I hate watching myself because I have this disgust and distinct separation from me in the past. But I watched myself with empathy and with this cool way of analyzing myself from a distance. I still felt connected to me, but also I could see, oh, there are little snippets of me being myself. And there's me kind of putting on a kind of flattened affect and a facade. And so it was cool to see little sparks of me come out and sort of my personality shine in that video. And it made me realize how much I'm not myself, and how that needs to change. Because what's the point of being alive if you're not being yourself? So I started to feel excited about my future, whereas before I was terrified and lost. Even though I really wanted to change and succeed. And I think that's a conundrum that most people feel, especially when they struggle with mental illness. And people get so frustrated with them if they're just regular. And they're like, you need to change. Why can't you? And there's no one more frustrated than the person that wants to change, but can't. And this gave me the ability to enact on my goals. And I never thought that would be something that I could do without constant barrage of my brain telling me no and getting in the way. Like, I didn't think this was going to work this well. That's kind of why I'm really making this video as well. If someone's open to the risks and willing to try, and if you've tried everything else, I personally can't recommend it enough. Personally, I can't speak for your experience, but for me, changed my life. So I was able to realize that I was let down by basically all the adults in my life, though it wasn't from a victim mentality, which was kind of me from the past. That was kind of my chronic behavior. It was just how that situation or situations, how they impacted me today and my pathology, and how I want to find good people in the future and find people that root for me, because that was always a thing that I didn't realize, but now I do, that nobody was in my corner. I didn't really have anyone that believed in me. And that's important. You need just one person to believe in you to, change your life in a good way. I started to trust myself, and that was the hardest part, but the best part. I realized everything I need is within me. And a wise friend told me that before this experience, and she was confident that I was going to have that experience. She was right. And so it was definitely prophetic, and it was so cool to have that be an actual realization where I realized I'm me, that's enough, and everything I need is within me. All the answers are within me. Obviously, I don't know everything. I'm trying to educate myself more and learn more things and read more books, but everything I need is within me. And that's the biggest reward you could ever ask for or give yourself. I was able to focus on writing my book more. I felt inspired to write. I was able to see ideas clearer. and come up with ways to tie loose ends. I was able to kind of layer those books, stack ideas, tie things together, creatively see things in a very objective way, like almost looking from above and down. So you get the whole picture, the whole vantage point. I learned I really thrive in a like-minded community, and I embarrassingly don't have that right now. I haven't had that in a really long time, and I really do worry that I'll never have that in the creative space, and I'll never find people that are like my, for lack of a better word, tribe. And I just really understood how important that is to me, to find people that are like me. And I am social. I just don't like the people I'm around, and that's okay. That's an important lesson to learn. I also worked and still continue to work on healing my horrific relationship with money. I started to realize that I deserve comfort, that I deserve ease in my life. I don't deserve suffering and constantly feeling guilt. Those feelings have definitely subsided. They're not gone. I don't think they'll ever go. They've definitely quieted. Because guilt was, it just ate me up every single day. I feel guilty for things that weren't even my fault. I was trained to just feel like I never deserved anything and that I was bad. I'm not a bad person. So that was a nice feeling to get kind of cleanse myself of a lot of that. I realized my job isn't fixing everyone and everything in my life. It's not possible. And I can't take care of myself if I'm doing that. Learn about boundaries. That's a big one. I didn't grow up with boundaries, so I'm learning them and I'm figuring them out. And I'm able to kind of stand up for myself more and find what feels good to me and how to say no to things. I also realized that when I'm bored, I turn inward and become self-destructive, kind of like a greyhound that if he doesn't get a super stimulating hour to run, becomes very aggressive or chews the furniture, very, kind of needs that energy release. I'm not naturally energetic, but I need intrigue, excitement, interest. I need a daily challenge. It reminded me that I'm a part of humanity. We're all human, and we need to find meaning, and that comes from connection, community, or talking, and specifically that's what works for me. I realized a lot of professional goals that I want to do, professional ideas, different podcast ideas that I want to do. It felt very clear and possible now. I want to document my growth. I really do think that seeing someone grow, and if I put myself out there more, that will help other people, which is my ultimate goal, is to leave the world a better place than I found it. And I realized I haven't been doing that. And I really, 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 really want to. So I also realized that I've been feeling very bored lately, and I do need to move on to the next steps of my life. And I need a life that's a mixture of hard work and then a break of fun, kind of like how school is set up. And I have some ideas and some in future episodes about that, but I'm literally not built for a 9-to-5 job. So all of my realizations, all of the things that I kind of boiled down that I learned from this experience. So if these are things you potentially want to understand in your life, maybe that can get your mind thinking of, maybe this is for me, even though I can't help but stress. It's different for everybody. And your voice in your head translates things to you differently, because it's you, it's your voice. It's the plant medicine is working through you. It's not using me as a translator. All fungi are edible. Some fungi are only edible once. Terry Pratchett. So, my caveats. This is not for everyone. If you have a predisposition to schizophrenia, don't do it. There have been drug-induced schizophrenic episodes. Some people are just not wired for psychedelics. If you have a major history of mental illness in your family, I do, but it's not schizophrenia specific. There's maybe one potential instance, but I was also willing to weigh the risks. For me, this is worth it. So you have to think, do risk analysis. Is this the potential loss of your mind? Is it worth it? Have you tried everything else? And if you're under the age of 25, your prefrontal cortex hasn't finished developing yet. You are not you yet. Do you want to tinker with that? Even though a lot of people have done it before the age of 25. Is that a worthy risk for you? If you have a propensity towards manic episodes, I'm a hypocrite because I do, but I did my due diligence, understood the risks, had a plan in place with the person I was working with, told my therapist about it. She was very on board with me doing this. I put all the marks into place in case something went wrong, and I did my due diligence. And don't do it if you're not willing to put in the work. It takes effort. It takes work. You have to do journaling. You have to do awareness. You have to have awareness of what your mind is telling you. You have to keep track of when you're taking it. You have to do internal monologue and dialogue with yourself to really understand what your mind is telling you. You have to have goals. You have to be willing to put in the work, because it's not a magic pill. This requires effort. And let me tell you, as someone that has put in the effort, 100% worth it for me. I didn't think it would work this well. Even my therapist was floored at how even my voice was less slowed down. I was speaking faster. I was more animated. I sounded less depressed. And we see each other, or we speak over the phone. She doesn't even see my face. It was just in the way that I spoke. So for me, I cannot recommend this more. However, I don't recommend it for everybody. And this is just the beginning of my journey. I want to try new strains of mushrooms, maybe go down the ayahuasca route, maybe DMT in the future, but I want to be really mindful about not overdoing it. I want to try a mini dose, which is before sitting and taking a large dose and really having a psychedelic experience, psychedelic experience. And yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm just one person that took it and it worked for me. So let me also connect it to this, because I'm so proud that I've been able to work on my book and get things done. I'm so close to being done with my book, so close. Let me read a little excerpt that kind of connects to, the feeling of taking psychedelics, partying, that kind of euphoric feeling. I kind of chose an excerpt that goes with the theme. This is the teenage girls that are friends are walking home after a party in their suburban town. After the party, we all walked home under the haze of streetlights. The field was not too far from my house, a clearing after about a mile of woods. You can walk along the sidewalk and not even know it's back there. It's the place for kids to do whatever they want and not be under the eye of their watchful parents, if even for just a minute. The cops even leave us alone. I think it's because they are just too lazy. You can only get back there by foot, and the cops around here don't want to get their shoes dirty, let alone walk a mile through the woods to give a few kids underages. It's our safe place. Until the gentrification of the woods happens and too many kids start finding out about it. That's how everything gets ruined. Humans have a knack for ruining anything good for them. I like for things to sometimes just be a secret, to have a place or a world that not everyone knows about. Kind of like the room of requirement in Harry Potter. You can only find it when you need it. Someday, just like everything, the field will no longer be a secret. A tacky yet expensive subdivision will come in and usurp those peaceful woods, taking with it all the oak trees and singing birds and dandelions and deer. It will all be wiped clean, as if a tornado came through in a nice little square. God forbid someone moves onto a plot of land with a little bit of life left on it. And where a 100-year-old tree once proudly stood will soon be a fat toddler's face smeared with orange dust, crying for more Doritos, and a sterile mortuary of a kitchen that cost an eye-watering $50,000. But little do they know where their precious Tristan stands, where decades of unprotected and premarital sex and all the drugs and alcohol their little puritanical brains could ever comprehend. That is atrocious, but a morbidly obese toddler is the good thing, a future corporate drone full of fat and empty of good ideas. Apparently, that's what we call progress. God, if only he could see us now, the little devils he's designed. We're all so fucked. It's so peaceful at this hour of night. It's approaching 4 a.m., so the streets are dead. We walk in the middle of Euclid. We walk as if we are cars, swerving between the lanes, little drunk bodies whooshing across the left and right sides of the road. No real car, though, comes barreling us over. It's so quiet that we can hear each other's breath. We laugh at nothing, still cross-faded on weed and cheap vodka. The best kind of laugh is one that comes from just existing in that moment with people in the exact same headspace as you, because we're all self-medicated on the same shit. It's the feeling of being alone and together all at once. Annabella spins herself around a light post, spreading her free arm as far as it will go. Luna bumps into me on the street, laughing as she does it. We are just alive. Rules not need apply. The world is quiet. Only we exist right now. All the people in the houses are little dolls asleep in their beds, our dollhouses to do with whatever we please. It's these kinds of nights that might make me miss this place. It just might. So, excerpt of my book. Hopefully you'll give it a read whenever it's done. I'll obviously be promoting it up a storm when it's completed. But yeah, I can't help but say try psychedelics or don't, try microdosing or don't. It's up to you, but I just almost feel like it's the way of the future. And I'm not a big believer in anything. You know, it's funny, my parents aren't really people that are a part of organizations. Like when I joined a sorority, they thought I joined a cult because I really liked it and got so into it, and they didn't really raise me to be like a group person. Like they kind of thought, don't join the military, that's the war machine, don't be a part of this, it's cultish. And so I joined a sorority because my roommate wanted to, and she didn't want to go through recruitment alone. So I'm like, all right, whatever. And then I got really into it. But it was because the experience was so good. So I say this long-winded story to say, if you have evaluated the risks, if it feels worth it to you, if you feel like you have treatment-resistant depression and you're a good candidate, and if you want to just expand your mind and connect to the earth and life and people in a different way, it changed my life, so it could change yours. Let me end with kind of a overarching idea about psychedelics. To hold sovereign and exclusive ownership over one's own conscious mind, to explore freely and without boundary, is surely the most fundamental of human rights. Third-party intrusion into this wholly personal territory is a grievous breach of this inalienable freedom. Dominic Milton Trott, The Drug User's Bible. At the very least, I do think the option should be on the table for people to partake in psychedelics, especially if it could change someone's life and change the course of humanity for the better. So, come this far. Thanks for listening. If you're listening on YouTube, is there a mushroom emoji? Drop a little mushroom emoji in the comments. And yeah, find me on Instagram at the Happiest Sad Person Podcast. Email me at 11jacobsa@gmail.com. Questions, concerns, people you'd want me to interview, talk to, topics to discuss, criticisms. I'm here for it. As always, thanks for listening. And if you know somebody that doesn't have someone in their corner believing in them, be that person for them. All right, bye. Bye, guys.